Hello friends, I am glad to see you again. Today I will tell you about a neighbor named Karen who is building a barn on my land. 2 years ago, I closed on the back half of what used to be Hickory Spring Dairy, a family farm that got diced into neat parcels when the matriarch passed away. My slice is a long rectangle, 10 acres draped in oak and hickory with a seasonal creek trickling through the center. The original farmhouse plus 40-odd suburban lots form Cedar Grove Estates. They have manicured lawns, identical mailboxes, and a homeowners association so fussy that rumor says they once cited a guy for leaving a garden hose coiled the wrong way. The sole paved road into the area is one good loop, an HOA-maintained cul-de-sac that dead ends at a gravel easement slicing across the southern edge of my property before petering out at a rusted cattle gate. The easement appears on every recorded plat dating back to 1954. It's my legal driveway and the only way heavy equipment can reach the back half of my land. Across that gravel lives Karen. Yes, her actual first name, and it fits like a bespoke sweater set. Picture a perfectly highlighted bob, an SUV the size of a yacht that never leaves asphalt, and a personality that could curdle milk. Within days of me unloading the moving truck, she left a handwritten note on my door welcoming me to The Grove and reminding me to review the community standards packet before making any exterior changes. I called, thanked her, and gently explained I wasn't under HOA jurisdiction. She smiled the way a cat does before it tips a glass off the counter. Spoiler, she was not done with me. Fast forward 6 months, it's late May, sticky and loud with cicadas. I'm in my home office, a converted sunroom overlooking the drive, talking a frazzled paralegal through resetting her VPN. Mid-sentence, I hear the unmistakable beep 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 of construction equipment reversing. I glance up and nearly swallow my tongue. A bright yellow backhoe is crab walking up my gravel lane, followed by 2 flatbeds piled with lumber, corrugated metal, and a portable toilet. A subcontractor rolls out orange fencing like he owns the joint. I jog outside, headset still dangling. The foreman, clipboard guy, tips his hard hat. "Morning, boss. Where do you want the pole barn staked?" I blink. "Whose barn?" "Karen's." He says it like everybody has a neighborhood Karen commissioning rogue barns. "Permit solid. HOA signed off." He flips the clipboard so I can admire a very official-looking form stamped in neon green ink. Cedar Grove Architectural Committee approved. My property address is printed across the top. I politely inform him he's 40 feet inside my boundary and needs to stop. Clipboard guy squints at his GPS app. "Ma'am, I got coordinates straight from the homeowner. 2 laborers are already unloading rebar exactly where I'd planned a greenhouse. Bureaucracy moves slower than wet concrete, so instead of zoning, I dial the county sheriff. Deputy Rogers shows up in under 20 minutes. He's seasoned enough to keep a poker face, but young enough his mustache looks like a dare. I produce my survey, my deed, and a phone screenshot of the GIS parcel map. Rogers paces to the old Cedar Corner post, radioing coordinates back to dispatch. Satisfied, he taps clipboard guy's shoulder. "Pack it up, fellas, wrong dirt." Right on cue, Karen bursts from her house wearing designer gardening gloves and righteous indignation. "You are harassing my contractors," she shrieks, jabbing a manicured finger at me. Then to the deputy. "The association approved an outbuilding on the utility lot." Rogers stays zen. "Ma'am, the so-called utility lot is her privately owned property. She's not in your HOA." Karen thrusts a sheaf of papers at him. "Then the county messed up the maps." Spoiler again, the county had not messed up anything. The crew reloads in sullen silence, muttering about wasted fuel. I photograph every tire track. Rogers files an incident report and hands Karen a yellow carbon copy warning that further entry will result in trespass charges. She calls him a rent-a-cop, never smart when the badge is real steel, and retreats, slamming her ornate front door so hard a stained glass hummingbird pops loose. That night I draft a certified cease and desist letter. Karen refuses delivery, marking it, "Not at this address." Fine. I install 2 motion cameras facing the easement and sync T-posts with barbed wire along the vulnerable southwest corner. I also consult a real estate attorney named Elliot, whose business card shows a bespectacled bulldog. Elliot's handshake alone radiates "I bill by the quarter hour." By late June, we file in district court. Trespass, attempted conversion, and damage to topsoil. We request compensation, an injunction, and reimbursement of attorney fees. Karen files a countersuit pro se alleging harassment, emotional distress, and obstruction of neighborhood betterment. She attaches the same forged HOA form plus an affidavit claiming the land is unused common area. Elliot beams. "Self-representation," he whispers, "keeps my golf membership paid." 4 hearings and a mandatory mediation later, the judge rules fully in my favor. The green stamp on Karen's paperwork? A novelty notary seal ordered from a craft site. The real architectural committee chair testifies they never saw an application. The court orders Karen to pay for a licensed survey, remove the debris, regrade the soil, and cover my legal fees. An injunction bars her, her agents, and contractors from setting foot on my parcel without written permission. Outside the courthouse, she hisses that I'll be sorry. I assume the saga is over. Reader, it was not. For the next few weeks, things go quiet. Too quiet, like the third act of a horror flick when the monster's crouching behind the couch. Karen's SUV sometimes idles at the edge of her driveway aimed at my house. I wave. She revs the engine. During that lull, I take smug pleasure planting sunflower sprouts where the barn stakes had been. Pixel and I haul compost, set up drip lines, and build a picnic table from reclaimed cedar. Friends joke the fiasco will make a killer story at future bonfires. I start to relax. Then, on a humid Sunday in August, I find my mailbox stuffed with glossy flyers. Cedar Grove Estates is holding a special ballot to annex the remainder of the Hickory Spring tract for the purpose of uniform community management. Remainder means my 10 acres. The fine print says non-members may opt in by signing a covenant deed. No signature, no annexation, but their audacity makes my blood simmer. Elliot advises letting the HOA waste its postage. They can't force me in. Still, I attend the open comment portion of their September meeting. I sit in a metal folding chair at the back of the rec center gym, while Karen presents a PowerPoint of my cottage circled in red, calling it blighted land. I raise my hand, point out the photos violate my privacy, and remind the board they lack jurisdiction. A few neighbors look uncomfortable, a few scowl. The motion dies on the floor. Karen's glare could scorch earth. That silent war of paperwork drags through winter. Karen pays the judgment, barely, then files an appeal and loses again. By spring, the sunflowers are 7 feet tall, and I'm starting to think maybe the universe learned its lesson. Cue ominous thunder roll. Late April, my company sends me to an out-of-state conference. 4 days of fluorescent ballrooms, bad coffee, and name badges. On the third morning, my cell service flickers. I ignore the motion camera alerts, assuming deer. I was wrong, very wrong. When I roll back into town Friday night, tired and smelling of airplane peanuts, I find a brand new wrought iron gate across the gravel easement. It's welded to 8-inch steel posts sunk into concrete. Fresh padlock, keypad entry, the works. Beyond it, the drive is barricaded with hay bales. A shiny aluminum sign reads, "Private HOA Maintenance Access. No trespassing." Karen's SUV is nowhere in sight, but a sticky note flaps on my mailbox. Call the association RE, new security measures. My stomach drops. The gate is smack on my side of the property line, same spot as the ill-fated barn. And without that drive, I have no access to the back 5 acres. My creek, my beehives, half the timber I plan to thin this fall. I throw the truck in reverse, park, and march to Karen's porch. No answer. Lights off. I text photos to Deputy Rogers and to Elliot, then spend 2 hours digging through county records online. No permits, no easement modifications. My motion cameras confirm the installation started 2 days after I boarded my flight. Timing that precise is no accident. At 7 a.m. Saturday, Rogers meets me at the gate. He tries the padlock, radios the VIN on the installer's truck, still parked nearby, and whistles. "That's a $3,500 custom unit," he mutters. "Somebody really doesn't want you accessing your own place." He drafts another incident report and calls a tow for the installer's truck. The operator refuses to cross the gate. Too risky without a removal order. Rogers can't cut the lock without a judge's signature. Bureaucracy again. So begins round 2 or maybe 3 of my unintentional feud with Queen Karen of Cedar Grove. And that, friends, is where things go from petty to felony. The first order of business was getting that gate off my land. Elliot filed an emergency motion for injunctive relief first thing Monday. By noon, we were in front of Judge Salazar, a no-nonsense jurist who once fined a landscaper for chewing gum in her courtroom. Karen didn't bother to appear. She sent what she called her liaison, a nervous man wearing an HOA badge on a lanyard, Riley Chandler, listed on Cedar Grove's website as treasurer. Salazar listened as Elliot laid out the timeline. Easement blocked, no permit, forged claim of authority. Then she turned to Chandler. "On whose authority was a private gate erected on property you do not own?" Chandler tugged at his collar. "The architectural committee approved the project." Salazar raised an eyebrow. "Show me." Chandler produced a single sheet with the same green novelty stamp that had sunk Karen's case the first time. Salazar sighed the way teachers sigh when a student turns in the wrong homework twice. Emergency injunction granted. The defendants have 72 hours to remove the obstruction or face contempt. Rogers served the order that afternoon. Karen signed for it with a smirk. 3 days ticked by. Nothing moved but squirrels and my blood pressure. On the 73rd hour, Elliott filed a contempt motion. Rogers came back with bolt cutters and 2 deputies. They photographed, measured, and finally severed the padlock, swinging the iron gate open like the maw of a defeated dragon. The installer's abandoned truck, now sun-bleached, got towed. We stacked the gate sections neatly on Karen's lawn. By statute, she had 30 days to retrieve her property before it became mine to scrap. She responded by calling the sheriff to claim we stole her gate. Rogers showed up, glanced at the court order, and told her to have a pleasant day. I heard she spent the evening yelling at the HOA's voicemail. The conflict should have ended there, but petty has no bottom. 2 weeks later, I came home to find my boundary fence cut in 3 places. Fresh tire ruts sank deep into the mud near the creek. One of my beehives lay smashed, frames scattered like pickup sticks, honey oozing into the grass. Pixel stepped on a nail board left by the fence line and yelped so hard my heart stopped. The vet pulled the nail, prescribed antibiotics, and warned me to watch for infection. I was done playing defense. I ordered 4 more motion cameras, the kind that live stream to the cloud and text alerts every 10 seconds until you click mute. I also hired a licensed surveyor, Nora Beltran, who owned a robotic total station and the attitude of someone who'd chased off coyotes with a transit tripod. Nora marked every corner with fluorescent stakes capped in steel. She even left laminated placards explaining criminal penalties for moving survey monuments. That night, the cameras pinged at 1:13 a.m. The live stream showed 2 figures in hoodies yanking stakes and tossing them into the creek. One carried bolt cutters. The moonlit frame caught his profile just long enough for facial recognition software, if I'd had any. Instead, I had the next best thing, Deputy Rogers, who recognized Chandler from prior calls. The second figure, shorter and sporting a platinum bob, needed no introduction. Rogers secured a warrant for criminal mischief and trespass. At dawn, he and 2 deputies knocked on Chandler's door. Body cam footage later showed Chandler in pajama pants insisting he was sleeping all night. Rogers simply held up a printed still from my camera. Chandler's face mid-grimace, bolt cutters shining. Chandler shut up. Karen fared no better. Rogers recovered the missing stakes from her garage, along with Nora's laminated placards and a half-empty can of spray paint the same color used to deface my no trespassing signs. Karen claimed Chandler stored tools there without her knowledge. Rogers let her spin the tale until she blamed wild teenagers. He then produced another still, her SUV's license plate illuminated by my driveway cam at 1:06 a.m. Both were booked at the county jail. Karen made bond by lunch. Chandler didn't. Turns out he was already on probation for a 2021 check kiting scheme. Violating that put him on a no-bond hold pending review. While Chandler stewed in lockup, a bigger bomb dropped. Elliott subpoenaed Cedar Grove's financial records to track who paid for the $3,500 gate. The HOA's bank sent a spreadsheet showing a cashier's check drawn from the Infrastructure Reserve Fund. Signature line, R. Chandler, Treasurer. But an accompanying email from the property management company insisted they never authorized such a withdrawal. We dug deeper. Chandler handled bookkeeping solo to save money. Over 18 months, he'd written 7 cashier's checks totaling $46,900, each for grounds improvements that never happened. The gate was merely the latest. That put the embezzlement well into felony territory. The HOA board, blindsided and horrified, voted unanimously to press charges. Detective Miriam Page from the county's white-collar unit took over. She seized Chandler's home computer and found doctored receipts, falsified meeting minutes, even a Word template for that neon green architectural approval stamp. The template file's metadata listed Karen as a co-author. Page connected 2 more dots. Chandler had funneled part of the stolen funds into Karen's private bank account labeled Consulting. The consulting total, $18,250. The same amount Karen had paid a local contractor for the pole barn materials now rusting under a tarp in her yard. Karen lawyered up fast, a defense attorney named Holt who charged $600 an hour and answered no questions. Chandler, facing a probation revocation and new felonies, tried to cut a deal. He offered to testify that Karen orchestrated the whole land grab. She'd promised him a slice of my acreage for a song once the HOA annexed it. In exchange, he handled paperwork and, allegedly, miscellaneous nighttime tasks. The criminal case slogged forward over the summer. I kept busy mending fences, literally, and planting clover to soothe the bees. Pixel recovered like a champ, though he now barks whenever he hears bolt cutters on television. Nora returned to reset stakes. This time we bored 2-foot holes and filled them with quick-set concrete around the steel caps. Good luck yanking those out. Karen, out on bond, took to parking across from my drive, windows up, AC running, just staring. Rogers warned her twice that menacing behavior could violate her release conditions. She switched tactics. Anonymous complaints to the county about unpermitted structures on my land. Inspectors arrived, found nothing amiss, and filed the calls under nuisance. Officers installing new accuracy upgrades to the department's body cams needed training footage, so Rogers volunteered the easement as a controlled environment. For 3 afternoons, deputies filmed mock traffic stops, blue lights flashing, radios squawking right at the mouth of my driveway. Karen nearly choked on indignation but couldn't complain without admitting she'd been watching me. October arrived, bringing court dates like falling leaves. Karen faced misdemeanor trespass and criminal mischief. Chandler faced felony theft, forgery, probation violation, and conspiracy. Karen's attorney swung for a continuance citing stress-induced vertigo. The judge gave her 2 weeks and an eye roll. Chandler pled guilty to the probation violation. His original suspended sentence for check kiting activated automatically, 18 months in state prison. He still had to answer for the new felonies, but the DA offered a package, 4 years with parole eligibility and 2 if he testified truthfully against Karen. He signed. On November 6th, exactly 1 year after the barn attempt, jury selection began for State v. Karen. The courtroom buzzed. Local reporters smelled drama, a suburban feud, forged HOA stamps, tens of thousands missing. A defendant named Karen, the headlines wrote themselves. Chandler took the stand wearing county orange and remorse like an ill-fitting coat. He detailed late-night stake removals, cutting the fence, smashing the hive. Karen said the bees would make you abandon the land. And forging meeting minutes approving the gate. He produced text messages. Karen instructing, "Get gate up while she's gone. Easement becomes common area once blocked for 30 days. Law of abandonment." Spoiler, that's not a law. Karen's lawyer tried to paint Chandler as a liar trading lies for leniency. Prosecutor Boone played the jury a Ring camera clip of Karen and Chandler loading rebar into her SUV at 12:47 a.m., timestamp matching the night my stakes disappeared. Then he handed jurors the recovered gate invoice initialed by Karen. After 4 days, the jury deliberated 3 hours. Guilty on all counts: felony conspiracy to commit theft, felony criminal mischief, misdemeanor trespass. The judge revoked Karen's bond on the spot, pending sentencing. She left the courtroom in handcuffs, lips pressed so thin they almost vanished. Sentencing came in January. Snow dusted the courthouse steps like powdered sugar. Karen's attorney pleaded for leniency, citing a lapse in judgment fueled by neighborhood pride. Prosecutor Boone countered with photos of my destroyed hive and Pixel's vet bills. Judge Salazar delivered the verdict: 18 months state prison, same as Chandler, plus $32,000 restitution to me and $46,900 to the HOA. She also imposed a no-contact order extending 5 years past release. When deputies led Karen away, she glanced back, maybe looking for sympathy, maybe trying to memorize my face for a future voodoo doll. I met her eyes and gave a small, polite wave. Nothing petty, just closure. Chandler was transferred upriver the same week. Reports say he's working in the prison laundry, which feels poetic given all the money laundering. Life settled faster than I expected. The HOA, shamed by the scandal, elected an entirely new board. They mailed a formal apology along with a check for $4,500 to repair my beehives, funds recovered from Chandler's frozen account. I cashed it and sent them a basket of honey 6 months later. With the gate gone and the easement secure, I finally built my greenhouse at the very spot Karen once tried to claim. It's framed in cedar, glazed in polycarbonate, and smells like damp earth and tomato starts. Every time I unlock the door, I think justice tastes like fresh basil. Pixel and I take long walks to the creek unimpeded. The new path curves around a sign Rogers gifted me after the trial. Private property, no Karens beyond this point. It's a joke, obviously, but folks still stop to take selfies. The sunflowers self-seeded, forming a golden moat along the fence. Bees thrive, peace reigns, and if the easement cameras light up at odd hours, It's usually just deer, or occasionally Rogers, rolling by to say hello. That should be the end, right? I thought so too. Then this spring, I got a letter from the county clerk. Notice of civil lien satisfaction. Karen's McMansion had sold at auction to cover restitution. The buyer? An organic farming nonprofit looking to turn suburban lawns into community gardens. They asked if I'd consult on native pollinators. I laughed so hard I scared the cat, but that's another tale. The nonprofit that bought Karen's former McMansion called itself Sprout Tomorrow. Its mission: turn oversized suburban lawns into micro-farms that supply fresh produce to food deserts within 50 miles. The irony was delicious. Karen once weaponized the HOA landscaping code to police the color of porch lights, and now her manicured turf would sprout heirloom kale. When their program director, Joy, asked me to tour the property, I couldn't resist. We walked the perimeter while she sketched ideas on a clipboard. The backyard gets 7 full hours of sun, she said, pointing to where Karen's koi pond had been drained and backfilled. Perfect for tomatoes. And this side yard, she indicated the strip that once hosted clandestine barn supplies, would be a great apiary if we can partner with someone experienced. I nudged Pixel with my toe. Buddy here vouches for my bee skills. I've got 3 hives ready to split. Joy grinned. Done. We'll install a gate between our lots so volunteers can come through the easement without clogging one good loop. The reference to the infamous easement made us both chuckle. For the first time, that wedge of gravel felt like a bridge instead of a battle line. A week later, Sprout Tomorrow hosted a volunteer day. I loaned them my brush cutter, and half the new HOA board showed up in work gloves. People who once fretted about mailbox paint were now shoveling compost. Even Deputy Rogers stopped by with his teenage daughter. They laid cedar mulch under 200 transplants of mortgage lifter tomatoes, a cultivar invented appropriately to pay off debts during the Great Depression. The transformation was therapy. Every raised bed, every trellis echoed victory. The property that once symbolized entitlement now grew nourishment. From my porch at dusk, I'd hear kids laughing while watering rows of basil. Pixel stopped barking at every car. The air smelled of earth instead of drama. Of course, real life never signs off as neatly as a feel-good montage. In February, 8 months after Karen's sentencing, a certified letter arrived addressed to landholder Hickory Spring Tract. Inside was a terse notice from an attorney named Mulroney, representing one Elaine Castor, described as heir and next of kin to defendant Karen. Mulroney claimed Karen had executed a quitclaim deed granting Elaine a private right-of-way across my land, retroactive to the day before Karen's arrest. Elaine now demanded unimpeded ingress and egress. I recognized the game: create uncertainty, force a settlement. Elliot recognized it too. He contacted the clerk's office. No such deed recorded. Mulroney then emailed a PDF courtesy copy. Elliot opened it, zoomed in, and laughed so hard his screen shook. The notary's seal was, you guessed it, neon green with the same novelty stamp ID that had tanked Karen's barn scheme. Still, forged deeds can cloud title, so we petitioned the court for a quiet title action. Nora Beltran returned with her total station and produced a fresh survey. 2 weeks before the hearing, Mulroney withdrew, citing new information. Rumor later said Elaine realized the forgery could land her in the same women's facility where Karen currently folded prison laundry. She signed a stipulation disclaiming any interest and slunk back to whatever corner of the family tree she'd crawled from. Spring brought better mail: restitution checks from the state's Crime Victim Fund. Small monthly installments credited against Karen's prison wages. At $58 a month, it would take decades to zero the balance, but the symbolism mattered. I stuck each check to the fridge with a B-shaped magnet until Pixel ate the corner off one. Now they live in a drawer. Meanwhile, Chandler sent a letter from lockup. He'd earned a paralegal certificate through the prison's vocational program and wanted to apologize for the distress. He enclosed a hand-drawn map suggesting optimal orchard placement on my back 5 acres. Plus a referral to a nursery that offered bulk discounts to veterans. I'm not, but Elliot is. So close enough. His scrawl ended, "I know I messed up. Plant something good where I tried to break things." I surprised myself by writing back. I didn't promise friendship, but I told him the sunflowers were taller than ever, and the bees were thriving. Sometimes closure germinates where you least expect. July delivered another surprise, a registered envelope from the U.S. Attorney's Office. The embezzlement crossed state lines because HOA dues were processed through an out-of-state ACH server. Federal prosecutors planned to indict Chandler under 18 U.S.C. Section 1343, wire fraud. His cooperation against Karen earned a recommendation for concurrent time, but the feds still wanted a victim impact statement. Sprout Tomorrow, the HOA, and I each drafted one. At the federal sentencing hearing, Chandler looked slimmer, older, but oddly peaceful. The judge ran the sentences concurrently, so no extra years, but he was ordered to participate in a financial literacy program and perform 300 hours community service post-release, preferably with a non-profit fighting food insecurity. I nudged Joy. She raised an eyebrow that said maybe. When reporters asked why I supported the service clause, I quoted an old proverb, "He who plants a tree plants hope." Headlines the next day read, "Gate feud ends in Garden of Second Chances." Clickbait, sure, but the article boosted Sprout Tomorrow's donations by 10%. In late August, Karen became eligible for parole. I received notice as a listed victim and had the right to attend the hearing. Curiosity wrestled with indifference, but in the end, I stayed home transplanting pepper seedlings. The board denied her anyway, insufficient remorse and a disciplinary write-up for unauthorized correspondence. Rumors said she tried mailing snarky postcards to former HOA members. Rogers texted me a thumbs-up emoji with the caption, "Still no Karens beyond this point." The seasons spun. Frost kissed the greenhouse roof. Sap rose in the hickories. Peas climbed trellises. Sprout Tomorrow's garden exploded with produce. They hosted a harvest festival that drew food trucks, a bluegrass duo, and the county extension agent teaching worm composting 101. Children painted bee boxes, little masterpieces of neon swirls, and I installed them in a new apiary row. Pixel wore a bandana labeled security. He mostly wagged. Near sunset, Joy clinked a mason jar of iced tea against mine. "Remember when this street's biggest headline was mailbox height?" I laughed. "Remember when somebody tried to annex me by force?" She tilted her head. "Technically they did, but in the end we annexed their lawn for tomatoes." We toasted to poetic justice. As volunteers packed up, a familiar pickup rolled down the easement. Deputy Rogers hopped out, off-duty but still radiating lawman energy. He handed me an envelope and a grin. "Figured you'd want the deeds office to notarize these with a real seal." Inside were 2 documents: the county's final order on the quiet title action and the clerk's certificate releasing the last of Karen's property liens. Clean slate, legally bulletproof. Rogers lingered, eyeing the rows of kale glowing under string lights. "Need any help keeping these veggies safe?" Joy piped up. "Always. We're starting a twilight patrol. Volunteers walk the perimeter to deter deer." Rogers looked at Pixel, then at me. "We'd be honored." A week later, I installed the final piece of my long-delayed plan, a small cedar barn, legitimately permitted, stamped by a county official whose seal was a dull regulation black. The lumber? Reclaimed from the pallets Karen once dumped on my drive. I left one interior beam unpainted and burned a line of text into the wood. From chaos, growth. When the afternoon sun hits just right, the words glow amber. That barn now stores honey supers, seed trays, and a toolbox stenciled with Roger's badge number, his idea of a joke gift. Sometimes I catch volunteers reading the beam inscription. They smile without needing backstory. Late October, Sprout Tomorrow invited the public to a harvest dinner. Long farm tables ran the length of what had been Karen's immaculate lawn, now replaced by wood chip paths and rainbow chard. Guests paid whatever they could. Proceeds funded winter hoop houses. Under Edison bulbs strung from cedar posts, we served roasted butternut squash, garlic honey carrots, and heirloom tomato bruschetta. Everything except the bread had grown within 1 block. During dessert, a lavender-infused honey cake, Joy tapped a glass for attention. "Tonight we celebrate community," she said, gesturing toward me, "and a neighbor who defended his land so fiercely it wound up feeding hundreds." I felt my ears heat. "All I did was refuse to yield to nonsense," I responded. "The real victory is seeing something nourishing where there used to be hostility." Rogers raised his cup. "To no more neon green stamps." Laughter rippled down the tables. Across the garden fence, the new HOA president, Mira, chimed in. "To letting past mistakes compost into future soil." Another laugh, then applause. The clapping sounded like rain on a tin roof. Steady, cleansing. Pixel, sensing contentment, curled under my chair and sighed the deep sigh of a dog who survived nail boards and now dreams of marrow bones. "Friends, thank you. See you soon."